Karen's voice sliced through the midnight air like a cheap whistle, shrill and impossible to ignore. You owe the HOA $237. 19. And I'm not leaving until it's paid. She bellowed, her jowls quivering with righteous fury as she loomed over poor Mrs. Delgado, a frail widow who looked like she'd rather face a hurricane than this human landfill in a floral muumuu. It was absurd, almost laughable, if it weren't so infuriating. The woman who'd crowned herself the dictator of our sleepy cul-de-sac, HOA Karen, had a knack for turning petty disputes into Shakespearean dramas. Tonight, she'd escalated her reign of terror to a new low, banging on doors past midnight, demanding overdue HOA fees with the fervor of a loan shark. The conflict was simple but explosive. Karen, obsessed with her clipboard of power, believed she could bully anyone into submission. What she didn't know was that I, perched on my fire escape with my phone's camera rolling, was about to turn her one-woman crusade into a viral reckoning. Our neighborhood, a quiet grid of bungalows and picket fences, had been under Karen's thumb for years. She wasn't just the HOA president. She was a self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner of community standards. Forgot to mow your lawn? Expect a $50 fine and a lecture on property values. Parked your car an inch over the line? She'd slap a neon sticker on your windshield with a note that read, "Comply or else." Her reign was fueled by a toxic blend of boredom and superiority, her obesity only matched by the size of her ego. She'd waddle down the street, her clipboard clutched like a holy relic, her eyes scanning for infractions with the glee of a vulture spotting carrion. Tonight's target was Mrs. Delgado, a 70-year-old retiree who'd missed a payment after her husband's hospital bills piled up. Karen had no sympathy, no shred of decency. "You're dragging this neighborhood into the gutter," she spat, her voice echoing off the stucco walls. Mrs. Delgado, clutching her shawl, stammered apologies, her hands trembling as she tried to explain. Next to her stood Javier, the teenage son of another neighbor, who'd rushed out to defend her. "This is crazy. Karen, it's midnight," he shouted, his voice cracking with a mix of fear and defiance. Karen wheeled on him, her chins wobbling like a jello mold. "Don't you dare talk back to me, you little punk. I run this place." She jabbed a sausage-like finger at his chest, her face a grotesque mask of contempt. Javier flinched but held his ground, his fists balled at his sides. The scene was a powder keg, and Karen was tossing matches with every word. I'd had enough of her tyranny months ago. Last summer, she'd fined me $100 for planting unauthorized marigolds in my own yard. Marigolds. The woman had a vendetta against anything that didn't bow to her rulebook. So when I heard her screeching tonight, I grabbed my phone and climbed onto the fire escape. The alley below gave me a perfect view. Karen, center stage, berating her prey under the sickly glow of a street lamp. I hit record, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and exhilaration. This wasn't just about catching her in the act. It was about exposing the monster behind the clipboard. As Karen's tirade grew louder, a small crowd gathered. Mr. Patel from across the street, still in his pajamas, and Lisa, the single mom who'd once been fined for her kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk. They whispered nervously, too scared to intervene directly. Karen thrived on that fear, her voice rising to a crescendo as she waved her stack of HOA notices like a weapon. "You think you can ignore me? I'll have your house lean by morning," she screeched at Mrs. Delgado, who was now in tears. That's when Javier snapped. "You're a bully, Karen. You can't just harass people like this. He stepped closer, his skinny frame dwarfed by her bulk. For a moment, I thought he might actually swing at her. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits, and she shoved the clipboard into his face, knocking his glasses askew. You want to play tough? I'll have you arrested for assault. She roared, oblivious to the irony. I zoomed in, capturing every second of her meltdown. The audacity of her lie accusing a kid of assault while she was the one shoving made my blood boil. But I kept filming, steadying my hands against the rusty railing. This wasn't just a neighborhood spat anymore. It was a crime scene, and Karen was digging her own grave. Then, like a gift from the universe, I heard the distant wail of sirens. Someone probably missed her. Patel, who'd slipped away, had called the cops. Karen froze, her head swiveling like a startled owl. Who called them? She demanded, her voice cracking with panic. Nobody answered, but the crowd's silence was deafening. Mrs. Delgado wiped her tears, a flicker of hope crossing her face. Javier straightened his glasses, a defiant smirk tugging at his lips. Two officers stepped into the alley, their flashlights sweeping the scene. Ma'am, step back, one of them said, his tone calm but firm. Karen's bravado crumbled like a stale cookie. This is HOA business. You have no right to interfere. She blustered, but her voice lacked its usual venom. The officers weren't impressed. They'd clearly dealt with her kind before. Ma'am, we've had multiple complaints about harassment, the second officer said, pulling out a notepad. You're disturbing the peace and intimidating residents. We need you to come with us. Karen's face turned the color of spoiled milk. Harassment? Me? I'm protecting this neighborhood. She gestured wildly at Mrs. Delgado and Javier, as if they were the real criminals. But the officers weren't buying it. One of them gently guided Mrs. Delgado aside, asking if she was okay, while the other motioned for Karen to turn around. I couldn't believe my luck. My phone was still rolling, capturing every glorious moment as Karen's hands were cuffed behind her back. She squawked like a stepped-on chicken, her complaints growing incoherent as the officers led her toward the patrol car. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president, she wailed, her muumuu flapping like a defeated flag. The crowd erupted into murmurs, a mix of relief and disbelief. Javier high-fived Mr. Patel, who let out a nervous laugh. Mrs. Delgado hugged Lisa, her sobs turning to shaky laughter. I stopped recording, my hands trembling with adrenaline. I caught it all, every sneer, every threat, every second of Karen's downfall. By morning, the video was everywhere. I'd uploaded it to the neighborhood's private forum, and someone, probably Javier, had leaked it to social media. The comments were brutal. HOA Karen finally gets what she deserves. This is what happens when you bully the wrong people. Local news picked it up, dubbing it the Midnight Shakedown. Karen's face, frozen in a scowl as she was stuffed into the patrol car, became a meme overnight. But the real justice came later. The HOA board, humiliated by the publicity, voted Karen out unanimously. Mrs. Delgado's late fees were waived, and the neighborhood started a fundraiser to help with her medical bills. Javier became a local hero, his courage inspiring others to speak up. Even I got a few pats on the back for the video, though I stayed anonymous. I didn't need the credit. Seeing Karen's empire crumble was reward enough. Karen tried to spin the narrative, claiming she was misunderstood and just enforcing the rules. But nobody bought it. Her fines, Her threats, her midnight crusades, they were all symptoms of a deeper rot. She'd thrived on control, on making others feel small. But in the end, her own arrogance was her undoing. The police didn't press serious charges, just a citation for disturbing the peace, but the public shaming was worse. Karen moved away a month later. Her house sold quietly to a young couple who planted marigolds in their yard without a second thought. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about Karen. It was about all of us. We let people like her hold power because it's easier to stay quiet. Her downfall wasn't just a spectacle. It was a wake-up call. We started meeting as neighbors, not just to complain about HOA rules, but to rebuild something better. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. And that, I think, is what Karen never understood. A community isn't built on fear or control. It's built on people looking out for each other, even when the odds feel stacked against them. As I watched the last of Karen's moving boxes disappear down the street, I felt a strange mix of triumph and pity. She'd been a villain, sure, but she was also a prisoner of her own making, trapped by her need to dominate. Maybe she'd learned something. Probably not. Either way, our little cul-de-sac was free.